China has test-fired a ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean. All that while the Communist Party desperately tries to save its failing economy. And why is Beijing coming after Calvin Klein? That and more on this week's China News Headlines. Welcome to China Uncensored, I'm Chris Chappell. China's electric vehicle industry is making inroads into Israel, as if there weren't already enough dangerous objects blowing up and setting things on fire over there. BYD, which stands for Build Your Dreams, has been trying to dominate the global market and pull ahead of Western EV companies in sales, and with the help of Chinese subsidies. So far, it might be working, at least in the case of Israel. In April, BYD became the first electric vehicle manufacturer to achieve #1 status in terms of vehicles sold in Israel. In Israel, as an incentive to potential customers, EVs receive generously low sales taxes compared to gas-powered vehicles, and it seems to be paying off for China. Israeli owners of the EVs say they enjoy the quiet ride, stylish design, lower maintenance costs, at least initially, of Chinese EV models, not to mention liberation from Israel's notoriously high gas prices. But some are also worried about the security implications of BYD EVs in Israel, since China is on pretty friendly terms with some of Israel's biggest rivals. And these EVs are crammed with cameras, sensors, and other data collection devices. Recent satellite images show Cuba is installing intelligence gathering capabilities linked to China near U.S. military bases. The report states that collecting data on military activities would help China better understand U.S. military practices. Ground News found just 50 sources covering this, coming from the U.S. and even Chinese government. And comparing how they're framing this, the U.S. clearly believes this is a spy operation, while China maintains their partnership with Cuba is completely above board. And it's actually America who needs to correct its Cold War mentality. But to cut straight through any spin, I can read the report myself. This is a major story and should be seen as a wake-up call for policymakers focused on national security, yet it wasn't widely reported on. So there's a good chance you missed this story and others like it without the help of Ground News. Their app and website gathers the world's news and instantly tells you which way a news source politically leans, how credible the reporting is, and even if the outlet is owned by the CCP. And considering a lot of mainstream platforms like YouTube censor content critical of China, I prefer to get my news here. Ground News also surfaces important stories barely getting attention from the left or right, so we're fully aware of what's happening and why each side might not want to talk about it. So I highly recommend going to ground.news/China or scanning my QR code to learn more. They're independent and subscriber funded, but my viewers save 40% off the same top-tier Vantage plan I use. Ground News' mission directly aligns with what I aim to do on my channel, so I really believe they'll be of great service to you too. A new report from Reuters indicates that Russia has a secret war drones project in China, which if you think about it is about as shocking as the sun rising in the east every morning. Drones have become a mainstay of the war in Ukraine, and the Biden administration has sanctioned a few Chinese companies it accused of supplying certain dual-use parts or equipment to Russia for their manufacture. But this report is the first to declare that Russia is receiving entire drones from within China. Reuters cited documents it had reviewed, as well as two sources from a European intelligence agency speaking on the condition of anonymity. There's also the credible source of common sense. Of course they are. What did you expect? According to one of the documents, a Russian R&D company, a subsidiary of a Russian state-owned arms company, has developed and flight tested a new drone model in China with the help of local specialists. In another report, the company said it was able to produce that drone and others at scale at a factory in China, so the weapons could be deployed in Putin's special military operation in Ukraine. Or as we in the West like to playfully call it, long, drawn-out, brutal invasion. The Reuters report notes that the new drone carries a heavier payload and can fly further than previous Russian drone models. So far, neither China nor Russia have commented on the report, and neither has the White House. But this looks to be the most convincing evidence yet that China is far more supportive of its no-limits partner in the war than it has let on. Besides, of course, the convincing evidence of common sense. Of course, what did you expect? Meanwhile, at the UN, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has once again rejected a China-Brazil peace plan. China has been trying to get other nations on board the 6-point peace plan it released with Brazil in May. And Brazilian leader Lula da Silva said in a speech to the UN on Tuesday that the plan should be resuscitated to end the war. You can tell a plan isn't great when it needs to be resuscitated. Yeah, I'm sure that zombie plan is just the ticket for peace in Ukraine. That plan, by the way, called on Ukraine to cede territory to Russia for peace. Among these 6 points were calls for no expansion of the battlefield and no escalation of fighting. Yet China has said nothing about Russia doing just that. Zelensky is having none of it. On Wednesday, he took China to task for supporting Vladimir Putin and questioned the true interest of Brazil and China in their plan for ending the war. Zelensky insists that only a full Russian withdrawal from his country can bring peace, which, given that the CCP is doing business with Moscow, defending it diplomatically, and now arming it, makes total sense. But he wasn't done yet. Zelensky also says that Russia is using the CCP's satellites to photograph nuclear plants. There have been worries recently in Ukraine and Western countries that Russia may attempt to strike Ukraine's nuclear energy facilities. I'm pretty sure we all know why that would be a terrible idea. As great as that Max show about Chernobyl was, I do not want a second season. That worry isn't new, but in an interview with Good Morning America, Zelensky revealed a shocking piece of information that Ukraine has received.
The recent information is that Russia has been using Chinese satellite and taking photos of the details of the objects on nuclear facilities. And on our experience, if Russia takes photos of certain objects, then there is a threat of strikes against the nuclear objects. So that is a nuclear terror.
Back in April, the U.S. warned its allies that China was providing satellite intelligence for military purposes to Russia. Although other earlier reports claimed that Xi Jinping would prevent Russia from carrying out one of its many, many nuclear threats. So basically, the U.S. warned about this, did nothing substantial with its allies to stop it, and now we're at the point of a potential second Chernobyl. Well, I guess I'll have a new show to look forward to, assuming humanity survives the nuclear fallout. And after the break, China's not done with its military threats to the world. Welcome back. China has test-fired an intercontinental ballistic missile into the Pacific Ocean for the first time in more than 40 years. The launch was widely publicized in Chinese media, which claimed that the government gave notice to relevant countries and that it wasn't aimed at anyone in particular. Considering how China sees itself as the only relevant country, does that mean they warned themselves and said, thanks for the heads up, and fired away? But Japan, Australia, and New Zealand all denied receiving any notification about the launch. And the fact that the CCP is engaging in such naked boasting about clearly aggressive activities instead of denying them as it usually does means that yes, this is clearly aimed at intimidating someone. China claimed this was a routine test that was part of annual training, which I guess they just skipped out on for 39 years. The test comes amidst heightened tensions all over the Indo-Pacific, with China threatening Taiwan and intruding in Japanese and Filipino waters, in addition to having joint naval drills with Russia. The CCP is massively building up its military, but more worryingly for the US, it's also aiming to bolster its nuclear arsenal. For the past 40 years, China test-launched ICBMs within the country rather than at sea. The testing is normally done here in the Taklamakan Desert in Xinjiang. So by launching it at sea this time, was China trying to spare the lives of the local Bactrian camels? How considerate! Or maybe they were just trying not to draw attention to something else. This was clearly a deliberate signal, particularly to the US and other Western countries who have been sailing in the region lately, especially in joint naval drills with the CCP's neighbors. That's not likely to help Xi's reputation, though to be fair at this point, the only thing that could help Xi's reputation is a mass Men in Black style mind wipe. But the CCP has other things on its mind, like unveiling a raft of new measures to boost its failing economy. The People's Bank of China Governor Pan Gongshen announced plans that will let banks increase their lending while also lowering borrowing costs. Asian stock markets jumped after Pan's announcement, but this comes after a series of disappointing data that makes it look like China will miss its own 5% growth target this year. At a rare news conference with two other officials, Pan said the central bank would cut the amount of cash banks are required to hold in reserve by half a percentage point, which could free up $142 billion worth of capital. But another cut could be made later this year on top of that. His plans also include measures to help the stock market and come after the U.S. Federal Reserve lowered interest rates for the first time in 4 years. It remains to be seen if this will actually do anything substantial to help China's economy. Considering how things are trending, I'm about as optimistic as this working as I am of Diddy making a #1 comeback album. China is threatening to sanction the owner of Calvin Klein over a Xinjiang cotton boycott. New York-based PVH Corp, the owner of Calvin Klein and Tommy Hilfiger, is under investigation by the CCP for refusing to source cotton from Xinjiang. That could potentially lead to sanctions on a U.S. company with huge business interests in China. Oh yeah, this is economic warfare. You see, in 2021, the U.S. passed the Uyghur Forced Labor Prevention Act. Basically, every U.S. company will face steep penalties if any of their products contain things made with slave labor in China. And since China was using Uyghur slave labor to make cotton in Xinjiang, PVH had to stop importing Xinjiang cotton to comply with U.S. law. Now, they're being forced to choose between its market in the West and its market in China. They will violate one country or the other's law. And remember, China's law is to protect slave labor. And for the first time, all 3 Chinese aircraft carriers are operating at once, right by Taiwan and Japan. This show of strength was meant to mark the 12th anniversary of the People's Liberation Army Navy's commissioning of the Liaoning, its first aircraft carrier. The Liaoning is a former Soviet aircraft carrier, while the other 2 are the Shandong and the Fujian, China's biggest and most advanced. The Liaoning was spotted near Japan and north of Taiwan. Meanwhile, the Shandong was in the South China Sea, while the Fujian was in the Bohai Sea. China's state-run Global Times reported that the Liaoning carrier group hosted takeoffs and landings of fighter jets and helicopters in the waters southeast of the Miyako Islands, which are part of the First Island Chain, an important boundary for the U.S. Japan said this was the first time Chinese warships have entered Japan's contiguous waters and slammed the incident as completely unacceptable. While China probably responded, "First time so far." Now I got a video I want to show you, but first check out this episode's sponsor, Ground News. Ground News is a great tool to help you stay well informed about what's happening in the world and how it's being covered by all sides of the political spectrum. Check it out with this QR code or go to ground.news/China. The link is in the description below. And before YouTube sends you off to some random video, here's one I want to show you from my new show, where I talk about things YouTube might consider too controversial by hiding it in gaming content. This one is about the normalization of deviance in the disaster of a game that was the new Star Wars Outlaws. Once again, I'm Chris Chappell. See you next time.